Welcome to Deserto's Curveball Review Show, presented by DJ Esports. Sign up on djesports.io to immediately participate in the World Prediction Series. Earn your deposit bonus for World Stage 2 using promo code DJEX50 for a 50% deposit bonus up to 200 USDT. You can also join the DJ Esports Discord for additional bonuses and incentives. Well, folks, we're ready to sit down and have a look back at Champions, but I'm not going to do it alone. Joining me, I've got fRoD as per normal and the very special guest of Nothing. How you doing, my man? Welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome for having me and you. And it's great to be here together hanging out. What event we just watched, huh, fellas?
Yeah, this is crazy, man. Actually, I'm actually kind of interested to see how this show's gonna go because it's two of us from NA. We got Mitch, and he's our new king. We have to answer to him now. So
Yeah.
take the reins, man. Where do you want to go with this?
I mean, look, we all knew we were going to be talking about EMEA, and we know we're going to talk about it quite a bit. So why not start by taking a look at Group A? Hell, there was an EMEA team in every group, and it's an EMEA team out of every group as well. It's a great world we live in. Start by Group A, guys. Acend, Keystars, Envy, and X10. fRoD, anything that stood out to you, anything that really surprised you, and I'll direct you even to the winners bracket match. What happened to Envy?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Envy, I think that they played very well. It's just some of these other teams, man, like they're just that good. Like they're playing with so much drive and passion that you can't underestimate anybody in these events. And if anything, for me, the storyline wasn't even necessarily like Envy and maybe them not performing as what was expected. It's more of like Ascend shouldn't even have won that first game almost until all the controversy with replaying the game and everything like that. So I mean, even then, I think that Ascend was going to make it out the group, and I thought they were going to do very well in this tournament. Just the whole concept of how like the way that it was handled with Keystars and everything, I think that was kind of like a very weird situation. But at the end of the day, Keystars, they could have beaten Ascend, who ended up winning the whole entire tournament. I mean, that group, in all honesty, was pretty stacked, like kind of, and no one really like gave it that much credit for it.
Correct. I'm sitting here looking at this in the end, like, it's cool to see X10 as well. Like, I remember last event we only talked really like, oh, Patty Fan had some sick rounds and stuff like that, but we didn't expect them to do what they did. And then, like you said, if Ascend gets dropped to the lower bracket early, they would have ended up. Who would they have played? They would have played somebody
Ascend would have
significantly
played
better.
X10 down there, and Envy would have played Keystars in
Yeah.
the upper bracket
Yeah, I
matchup.
just pulled it open. Yeah,
And then it would have been probably just another rematch. Ascend probably would have ended up winning the second game, so they would have going through maybe in the second seed. I don't think it would have affected too much because Ascend probably playing so well that they were going to most likely win the tournament anyways like that. But just like
Might
that
have got Envy
interesting,
out though.
yeah, exactly, and just that whole interesting factor of how. And I feel like Keed, like they were riding on such a high, they were looking so good, and then they just kind of ever since the decisions around, I think, replaying and everything like that, it just kind
Yeah.
of took a lot of gas out of them,
Yeah, I think that Nothing, obviously being a player very recently, how do you think that kind of messes with your head, right? Not only the match going your way, then the bug takes it back, then you end up having to replay it, you lose it after a significant comeback that almost proves you're the better team. I mean, at least for us at the event, it felt like that's got to just trash your mentality, right?
yeah. I mean, I've dealt with a share of kind of technicalities affecting us, but never
Mhm.
something I don't think to that. I don't know if we ever dealt with anything like that, Danny. We had the one thing in China that one time where we had to like prove something that there was
Yeah.
ghosting, but I mean, I think in the end, like I didn't know like I don't cipher cam all the spots. That was a thing, right? 'Cause I was
Yeah.
traveling that day and I read it from from the outside and I was thinking, wow, this is really annoying. But like when you're in a tournament, um, you got to do your best to just clear your mind for the next whatever opportunity you have to fight. And that's really as simple as it is. You know, you can get into it. I don't know if at one point you guys, I was trying to figure this out. Did they ask the players if they had a preference again? Did they do that shit that we always
It
dislike?
was really, like I heard a lot of stuff. Some was true, some wasn't. But yeah, one of the rumors going around at least was that the players were being asked like what they thought was the best move forward. I think it just seemed like
That's
they were very much lost on what to do.
me and Danny have dealt with that enough times, right, Danny?
Yeah.
Where you just, it's like
Yeah.
you need you need the admins and the infrastructure of the event to come in and say, this is the move. And I think that helps you with what I said. Like, if I'm going to be a clear mind as a competitor in the tournament, you don't want to hold a decision. Oh, do I have to worry about my conscience? And did I hook the other team? It's not on you. It should be on the event. So you could just focus on whatever their ruling is and move forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the tragedy in all this is that the players got involved. The reality is that the tournament organizer is responsible to pretty much making the decisions and enforcing the rules. You know, it's on them to make sure that these bugs don't happen more than one round, for example. It's on them to, you know, figure the best decision and make that decision possible, not like, you know, drag it along, potentially delay the tournament. And then the other tragedy of it is like you never like get players involved, because at that point there's guilt in it, whether it's like personal guilt or even community guilt. Players should not be involved in those decisions at all. Obviously, they should not have done the Cypher Cam, but they should not be involved. And then that's where it's like you feel bad for some of the guys in Ascend who it's like they got community hate or whatever because they had to replay the game. It wasn't their fault at all. And I'm sure it wasn't even almost at their request to have it replayed again or anything like that. But it's like they're just going to take everything is left to speculation because the tournament is not swift and decisive about what has to be done. And every single time that you and I have done, like, it's like almost like, where's Laurent? You know, like we need Laurent to come back and just like, this is like the old school, like TO guy that like every tournament organizer hired this guy to just handle literally everything, you just never played with him, and like that's what you need, someone that just takes care of business, you know.
Just a little add to that, without, just so people understand, Laurent, like you said, was an admin back in the day, and this is an admin we talked to, we ate dinners with, we did everything with. But if you were late a minute to your match was going live, whether you were sitting in your seat or not. This guy did not like.
He does not play.
Rules. This is how we play. And there was something actually comforting about knowing both teams were like held to this standard and the rules were going to be upheld. And so, yes, just to wrap it up, I concur, Daniel.
I think that's always been a problem, though. You look back at the same thing, Cypher Cams stage 1, we had like one-way Cypher Cams or indestructible ones, and you had these weird systems where each region handled it differently. It was really hard to get a grip on, okay, if I use this cam, what's going to happen to me? You know, we had a game against a team that used it for 50 or for 12 rounds, 13 rounds, actually. They got warned not to do it again at the end of the series. It was like,
sadly, I mean, this could have been patched how long ago too? Like when I think it was the Giants that got messed up. Like this, like it's the easiest patch like 3-4 months ago. So those are something that I think that I'm assuming that Riot will learn from this and implement like maybe quicker fixes. Like when they do these like bi-weekly updates, they could just like put a quick fix for every little thing they do. And this was sadly one that slipped through the cracks and caused a lot of controversy. But like that's something that I think they got to do a better job of preventing these things.
Yeah, I guess it's tough as well. There's a couple of bugs, like you have random, you know, Killjoy turret bugs, for example, that clip through some textures, and they're more nuanced. But in this case, it is genuinely one texture that is just visible from one side that needs to be patched. A shame it wasn't taken up earlier. A shame it wasn't caught on the day as well. From what I understand, you know, the admins didn't see, the players didn't report it in time, like it came out after the game, and it's all spirals. There's so many things that can be done better, but I think, you know, tightening that rule book definitely sounds like a very easy fix going forward. That it's just, if you do this, you're done. You know, this is a clear outline, whether it's that you forfeit the game or whatever it is. We need to have consistency, right? And that's the
it's like you know, like the referees, admins in sports or anything like that. They're just there to enforce the rules, and I think in this case, like whatever rules they are, for better or for worse, they just need to be enforced properly.
Just since we're here, just as a question to both you guys, do you anything else about the infrastructure of these tournaments that you guys would change? Like overall, like double MBO3 is generally pretty solid, but do some kind of round robin group seeding into that? How would you?
I think things worked out pretty well at Champs in terms of seeding. There were a couple ways that it could have been better, more selective, let's say, going into the event. I had like some criticisms of it, but looking at how it panned out, it just feels really fair. And I'm sure some aspect of that has to be random. But the one thing I would change is honestly the finals. A lot of us were discussing this, and it's like BO5s at the moment, they're kind of stale a lot of the time. Like I really think that teams don't have the depth and map pool to put on a good show for 5 maps. There always seems to be 2 that are like slapped out. Whereas in BO3s, we get much more decisive results, a little bit quicker, less boring for me.
And
at least.
Yeah, from a viewer's perspective, I was gonna say for you watching as well, like even if you understand the game well, like we do, you get
Mhm.
almost that shot's almost worse. You get bored sometimes of like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you feel like it's kind of like monotonous in the middle of the series. And then from a viewer perspective and commentators, it's probably much
Yeah.
easier as well to just carry that BO3 and have a better overall product for the tournament.
Yeah, I think in this format was probably the best one that they did so far, because in other tournaments, remember when we were complaining about like Iceland not even having like a proper team to run like brackets
Yeah.
and stuff like that? Like those things were kind of strange. But I think in this case, they did everything, maybe tweak a little bit of where maybe some representation comes from, is maybe where we had conversations before. But even then, like Latin America and Brazil showed up this tournament. So it's
Yeah.
like it's almost them deserving, and I don't want to say like take NA spots,
Like an NA
Like
slot,
no,
you know?
no, I knew you were
Yeah.
gonna say that, Mitch. No, no, we need one more actually.
We did one
Uh,
more, yeah.
yeah,
There was
yeah. I
another.
suppose, yeah, if you're gonna have a chance of making it to finals, you gotta put as many
I
teams in there as you
so
can.
Mitch, what am I? I'm just like taking. I know you're hosting here, but I'm like I keep
Go,
guiding
go,
this.
man. Hell yeah.
We were talking pre-show a little bit, and I cut us off about like NA and like the overall results.
Yeah.
Danny made a comment that kind of triggered me in a good way, where he said like I can't, like one NA team, like it's cool to see one A like Cloud9, what they're the only ones who got top 8, right? And then other than that, the best region kind of fell off. And as someone from this region, the one positive that I was going to start tangenting into, but pre-show and I held it off, was just that I did feel that when I watched that there's some positive, there's some silver lining here to us losing, because it's a wake up call to just to realize that the game we're playing is not like, this is not to bash on Valorant, but like you only need X amount of aim and X amount of mechanics and X amount of things to get the job done for the right plays. But are we making the right plays? Is our region putting in the effort to have the right game plan and approach? And obviously there were close games here. It's not like we just got blown out and it's just like EU is just, shit stomped us at every turn. There's Cloud9 Fnatic, third map, 14-12, a couple other scenarios, right? Overtimes and stuff. But yeah, what do you guys take on that effect? I think it's somewhat positive. It sucks for the fan base maybe to say, EU, they're back or whatever, and NA, we had our little reign, but it's just like overall, you want a good competitive scene, and I think this is probably a pretty healthy thing that happened.
I mean, I'll speak from a narrative perspective. Obviously, I can see everything you're saying about, giving teams that extra drive, making everybody look at themselves again and go, "Shit, are we doing this right?" If everybody's falling off like that, but I'll also say from a narrative perspective, it's awesome, dude. Like, no matter how long it runs as like EMEA being dominant, even if they win all of the events next year, eventually we are going to have that challenger step up. And it's like back when NIP were running like 98, 96 maps, whatever it
Yeah.
was straight. You do that again, like having those cross regional sort of rivalries is exactly what we want and what we want to sell. I think that's something not a lot of people get when we're like harping on each other and like, Sean's tweeting out, "Oh, EU's dead
Yeah,
and Sentinels
yeah.
don't lose and stuff."
EU nade,
It's
EU
all
flash.
yeah, exactly. It's just for fun. You know what I mean? Like we're all having fun. No one's actually sitting there going, "Just Shazam's dog shit, dude." Like no one actually hates the players. We all just want, good storylines, good gameplay, and we're actually getting it now, which is just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. No, and to what Jordan was saying a little earlier too, it's like Valorant obviously is a little bit more like complicated, like of a game than Counter Strike because of all the abilities and certain little nuances, but not that much more. But I think like once you get to a certain skill level, which all these teams are achieving that maximum skill cap that that everyone can kind of get to, that's at that very high pro level. It's all the little tiny details that make all the difference in winning these matches. That's the communication, the combination of abilities, the way they like take certain fights, like all those little tiny things that are going down. Like I think that is where NA was falling behind a little bit, like sort of like discipline factor, which I think that's where we have to like tighten up and understand that that's what makes a difference in like the very, very high level of game. Like you can't always just like try and swag out on people all the time. Like it does have a place, but at the same time, like there are moments when you got to tighten up and discipline kind of reigns supreme there. And I think that's where EU has that edge, kind of always has in some way. And then like they were able to like really exploit that, and just like really take it home this tournament with like just so many little micro plays and just trying to, really outthink the opponent in every little situation and not necessarily relying purely on the aim, because eventually everyone gets so good at the game that, everyone can cap out on your skill level, like your raw skill level. It's all these little details I think that, really do factor into how a team could be successful or not.
Yeah. Now that's Group A, right? With Ascend going out on top, X10 making it through the lower, which was not something that I expected at all. When we go to Group B, it's equally as surprising, I would say. Team Liquid go through up on top. I don't think a lot of people will be terribly shocked with that. Sentinels put up one hell of a good fight. And then you're imagining Sentinels breeze through Group B, we move on. But no, the future semifinalist of Crew Esports ends up beating Furia. No, they opened up terribly against Team Liquid. They got slapped around. In an elimination match versus Furia, I actually got to come and cast that day. My throat had finally recovered. And I was pretty depressed when I saw it was going to be Crew because I thought they were absolutely trash at every international event that they played at. Their opening game versus Liquid looked just about the same. So I was like, great, first day back and I get just a shit stomp for Furia and it's going to be terrible. And instead, they played and it was tangible from it was within the first, I would say 6 rounds. Myself and Tom are just like, this is not the team we've seen before. Like they're actually playing Valorant. They're not infuriating me every 3 minutes. And we saw them beat Furia, then beat Sentinels. I mean, that was a ludicrous result. And obviously, Crew's success only continued, but to get your reactions to that, Jen, Sentinels also not making it out of groups.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Crew was one of those teams that they just seemed to get stronger as the tournament went on. Like their passion just shone through in the whole entire time. Like it's actually crazy how they did. But just like watching their games and even just watching how they were playing some of these teams later on in the tournament, I think that there's like the way that they were calling their strats was amazing. Like they had a clear game plan every like attacking round where they were pretty much going in straight into bomb sites based on what they maybe saw from a VOD, or maybe they realized how a team is set up, and when they identified how they're playing the defense, they just went directly into something. Like the decisiveness of Crew on the attack side was unbelievable. And then when you bring in like the actual raw individual skill of all the players and Keznit just popping off, like that takes over and carries on the defensive side. But I think that for me, what I was impressed with the most is the strategic side and how they were just flowing on attack side. Like whether it was fast or slow or anything like that, they just always knew exactly where to be and what to do, like very quickly.
It reminded me actually when of like Fallen in them when they first came to NA back in Go, and we used to joke about their Braziliancy because they would be really resilient. And I mean, you saw it in Sentinels. They have their momentum. You could see the passion. I mean, Latin America teams in general, it seems to be one of the strengths of them is just like that. Like when they get momentum and their fight in them, and then they I think they didn't do what was it? They kind of smacked first map for Sentinels, right? Like I don't know if it was smacked, but it wasn't. Yeah, and then like come back and win second map. Like didn't get toppled over, and like Danny said, like offense looking super good. I think they looked super well rounded in terms of kind of what we call a default. And then I missed like map 3, but I remember just looking at it and just watching them. Not like I think Sentinels had a lopsided first half, and I was like, oh, like Sentinels are gonna like close this out, and then they just went on a heater. And so like they were just fighting back at every stage, and so
these are my people, man. These are my people.
Oh, yeah.
Cuban, from Chile. My stepmom's Colombian. Like we're close, I get it. I get it.
You're gonna go find your team to coach, huh? No, I'm kidding.
I got my.
You're not looking to hop ship anytime soon.
No, but we do have. But for me, it's also like a pride thing, because it's been such a long time seeing teams from those regions be successful, and I've always even like I've known Jordan forever, and I've always talked about like the passion that comes from people from those regions and stuff like that, and that's why I'm so glad a game like Valorant has given the opportunity for so many players like this to have a platform to show that and like change their lives through this and for the better. And it probably brings up a different conversation that if they're going to do EMEA and kind of lump everybody, like why can't we just do like NA and SA, like Nassau, like this is our region, what I'm saying, like we're one America now. That way we place a lot better in this tournament, right?
Okay I see. Try to piggyback on their success.
Or SANA, you go first. It's okay.
Sana.
Yeah.
Sana. Yeah, it's like a sauna because y'all get to just.
It has America in the name.
Get success. I like that. One of the things that kind of surprised me about Crew, especially, was like Nags. His first of all, like I got to interview him, and he was so passionate, man. By the end of it, he was crying, just saying. And it was a game they won. Right. It was the Sentinels game, actually. I'm pretty sure. Then, but the thing for Nags, his performance was pretty shaky for most of this tournament, but when he needed to, he turned up. And like we saw that in the Sentinels game. We just talked about the very lopsided first half on split. Sentinels were dominating. Crew won the pistol and only ended up with 4 rounds by the end of it. It was looking down and out. And then Nags alongside Keznit and the rest of them, they stepped it up and they pulled it across the line, 13-11 on both of the final maps to make it through. It was a really impressive feat to watch from Crew. I was not seeing them taking it across the line, and yeah, if anything, I was disappointed. I was looking forward to interviewing Zoms, getting some Vamos in there, but we got it in a different way, anyways. Moving on though, Group C, Gambit Esports and Team Secret making it out in the end. I think that it was a bit of a toss up. You know, when we talked about it before the show, before Champions started, we thought Gambit would make it out on top, but Secret, Vikings, Crazy Raccoon, it was definitely heavily contested. But seeing Team Secret miss out on the first event, or on the previous event, the Masters event, due to visa issues, they were. And actually, I spoke to the guys there. Dubstep said that they were 2 days away. If the visas came 2 days earlier, they would have made it to Masters 3. That is heartbreaking. But then they show up here and they actually managed to put up a great show in the group stages. I mean, it's fantastic to get to see these regions that have kind of been they've been left out of the conversation for the most part step up and now make themselves get some eyes on them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the opening map, opening game, they took a map off of Gambit, like the previous champions, you
Yeah.
know. So I mean, right out the gate, you're like, okay, hold on, these guys, like they were, you know, like unfortunate situation prevented them an opportunity before. Like they came here to play, and that's one of those things. Like, oh my god, they're probably gonna end up getting second place in this group. They might even be Gambit. They obviously didn't, very close, but then it's like these guys are for real. And I'm glad, like you said, that they got that opportunity. You know, they did have to end up going to have to play Ascend in the first round after they got out. But I mean, nothing but they're playing against basically the champions and all the best teams in the tournament. So for them, like, I think that they've done like a fantastic job of competing with the best and being able to give themselves the confidence to know that, hey, if we could just do everything we can to give ourselves the opportunity of being here, like we deserve to be here and we could actually win these games. So I think like just like all the other regions that have slowly over time have improved over the losses that they've taken, I think this is another team that, you know, improved a little bit within the same tournament. But obviously, I think that for them, they're going to keep improving as they take a little bit more L's, but against only really, really good teams.
Well, the Gambit's run was strong, but not enough, as we'll get on to discuss a little bit later on. Team Secret, yeah, you got to feel for them, man. They miss out the first event, the preview. I don't know why I keep saying the first. They miss out the second international event,
Yeah,
Masters
Berlin.
3, and they come
You
into
guys come back
this.
to Berlin.
Yeah, they come, but they made it to Berlin. They face off against Gambit. They face
Couple
off
months
against Ascend.
late.
It's like guys just can't get a break in terms of the matchups that they had. But I think that's got to be a great affirming thing for them to know that they're with a better org now that can get them that little bit more international reach, guarantee that they make it to the events. Then they also have great success, nearly beating the 2 teams that go on to be finalists. So huge run for them. Maybe we see more of SEA a little bit later on. But other than that, nothing too terribly surprising going on inside of Group C. Group D, on the other hand, I know that has you shocked, fRoD, because you were speaking a big game about Cloud9. Oh, they only barely made it out, man.
All right, well, really quick, let's review, Danny. We did get our pocket pick correct, right?
Yeah.
And
well, we got our pockets picked on this one though.
Oh,
yeah. The thing is, like, for us, like we knew that Cloud9 was one of the teams that had the best ability to kind of show out in this tournament. I think a lot of it is more of, it's not that recency bias, it's more of the fact that they're the ones that won the LCQ here. They've been playing so hot lately that I have a lot of good things to say about them and how they play, that I think that they were going to do well. Now, did they fall short of their goals? Yeah, but I think that them being the team that placed the best out of all the NA teams, you know, the one that made it out of the groups, was good. But it was really good games. Like the Fnatic game was really close. The Vision Strikers game was very good too. If anything, that kind of showed me that Fnatic was for real this tournament. Like they kind of came out a little bit flat once they got out. You know, I mean, well, not even flat. I would say like Crew just eliminated them, and Crew's just like, they just were ready to beat anyone almost. But Fnatic was one of the teams that once I saw those games and once they beat Cloud9, I was like, holy crap, Fnatic might actually win champs. Especially like we had mentioned before, like I had always critique like how I thought that they were limiting Durka a little bit in like his play style. Like I think they needed to unleash him a little bit more. They needed to like let him do his thing and have like more strats revolved around him. Like I feel like he was unleashed this tournament. And in this case, like I thought that I was like, oh my god, Fnatic is gonna win this thing, this whole entire tournament, not just this game.
Yeah, those first couple games, those first couple maps at Icebox, there's the opening Icebox versus C9. It was just like it's that vibe that like Fallen used to give, or Skadoodle in his prime, or all these Danny in his prime. And when you know when you're just like taking those your old I could think of it actually clearly, just to give you a little props, Danny. When you would see those timings on like an Inferno and walk down mid and kill the like defaulters that walking up all mid, you find those like that was like just free. Like so free. There's a lot of subtleties to it without both puffing you up too much. But there's no for the good snipers and people. And you saw, when I watched that first map, I was like, is everywhere he was at, I was like, that free kill. And it just seemed like he just had that nice bit of aggression, pull back aggression. The retakes on Icebox, just like this is a kind of side tangent where they would let the team take B and Dirk would go on top of the mid thing and they double flank, coordinate the flank. Long B peak with the updraft, like they just seem like their comms are really good early, and I saw that same excitement and confidence out of Durka. I think
and when you see these players like these oppers especially and snipers that they have that insane intuition, it's like you don't want to limit that. Like you don't want to obviously like you don't want to break the strat and have them break the strat, so there's a balance. But there's also times that you want them to just go do their thing because they've gotten themselves in a position, or there's like a split-second decision that they're trying to make, that they want to get a pick, and they're like,
especially as a sniper with a one-shot kill guy.
Exactly. And the thing is, that pick that changes the whole complexion of the game. So it's like, you want to enable that person, not kind of tell that person to like constantly be drawing back, or hey, don't take that fight or anything. It's like, that person that over time, especially if you give that person confidence, like they'll know when to make those decisions or not. You just have to understand the balance of the two. And I think that Fnatic did a fantastic job of that. They just ran into a train called Crew Esports later on,
Oh, they certainly did. Yeah, Fnatic making it out on top. Vision Strikers going out. The hopes for Korea sadly fading, but at least C9 were still there to, in some capacity, still hold the flag, having Zeta on the team. And he was certainly happy to be eliminating guys that he obviously knew decently well back in the day. And now, one of the last hopes for NA, or they were moving on into the playoffs. Before we move on to the playoffs, fRoD, I heard you want the spotlight for a minute with your buddy Nothing. Well, take it away, boys.
Yep. All right. Well, since the last episode, we kind of had a little conversation about the placing some bets on DJ Esports' website. Thought we had some pretty good odds, Jordan. I mean, that first game that we looked at right here.
I like your picks.
Yeah. I mean, I did too. To be honest, the NV game and X10, it ended up becoming like a lot more complicated and it got a little bit dicier. But we knew that NV was going to win. Probably, yeah.
In hindsight, and I'm like, did we know? after watching the way X10 ended up playing and ended up beating NV 2-1 in the decider, crazy turn events. But no, going into this tournament, we had a lot of confidence. NV was looking like one of our top prospects for sure going into this with the way they prepped. So that was our pocket easy pick that got a little dicey there, but still ended up we took that one home.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the other one here, like we had talked about this one actually, like we knew that Vision Strikers was going to beat Full Sense, but this was probably the thing that we saw as the best odds.
5-1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe we messed up on, putting a hefty bag on it, but
yeah, that probably should have been our smallest bet, to maximize. And that's a different conversation for betting strategy here.
We'll talk to our accountant. Yeah.
We might need to talk to the accountant. Yeah, I think we might be in the red. But I like the idea, though, what you brought it up. Danny did some good research and saw Full Sense making good results against teams in this region. And I think they beat Vision Strikers in the past, you said, right? Or they beat the other team.
They beat Damwon and some others that
had beat Vision Strikers.
And they beat Newturn. Yeah,
exactly. And so I liked it, but like you said, we probably want to put your most on your pocket pick, the least on the big 5-1 odds, just because. And then the tough one to call was the middle ground one, which was the C9 Fnatic was our tough one to talk about. But it was a good one to talk about because it realistically, I mean, what was it? It was down to a third map 14-12 OT, and Durka was just, as we were talking about earlier, just lighting a fire on everybody. So
Yeah, that was probably like one of the best series of like all the group play games, man. Like the Cloud9 Fnatic game, like it was almost kind of like a telling sign of whoever wins this game is almost like a lock for like top 4 of this tournament. Like they're just flying so hot right now. They were all playing
Yeah.
so well. I think that it was like one of the most evenly matched games there too. And yeah, I mean, I guess it could have gone either way, especially the odds being so close there. But yeah, these are one of these things that, you know, obviously we just gotta like recalibrate some of the amounts that we put, you know, especially like you said, even like the Vision Strikers game, like we knew, you know, like the underdog was probably not going to win, but it's like you got to take the odds so well there, you know, and sometimes you got to do it.
Hey, and that's part of it. Sometimes you do it, but that's why we appreciated having that chance with DJ Esports.
Yep. All right, no, and that kind of wraps it up. I mean, basically, we just, you know, did those bets here on the DJ Esports platform. You know, y'all could check it out, and that way we can go ahead and you know, kick it back to Mitch and see where we go next in the VCT Champions conversation.
The first 10 players to reach 60,000 DJT in their DJE wallet will win 50 XRP, so act fast. Use promo code DJ5050, deposit 50, and get 50 USDT back. Limited to the first 20 people. Sign up now so you don't miss out. So with the group stage closed up, it's time to take a look at the playoffs. Now, starting things off, I guess we'll go top to bottom. We had Acend and Team Secret facing off against each other. And we talked about this a little bit earlier on. I think we mentioned most of these opening games. The fact that Secret had to face off against Gambit, and then they move on later to take on Acend, the 2 future finalists. Not an easy run for them, but they can certainly be happy with what they put forward. For them, it was a 2-0 to Acend. I think that's kind of what most people would have expected. Liquid over Cloud9, on the other hand, big surprise out the gate with a 2-0 to the EMEA side. And that signaled the end of North America's hopes and dreams there at Champions. A surprise for most, I think. Nothing. Let's start with you on that one. 2-0? I mean, we would have thought it would at least get a map.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I had C9 winning, and I made my prediction. I'm standing by that I did make this prediction. And I think in the end, it's not so surprising. Scream is nuts. Yampi was developing a lot of confidence through his CS career. He's more experienced than a lot of people would know. Navira, Scream's brother, actually showed a lot of poise. It surprised a lot of people. I think I could see from the broadcast even that he just looked super comfortable, and the team looked like they had good chem. Seen on the other hand, I think Zeppa looked a little flat in that series. I remember just looking at the stats after him being surprised and kind of reaffirmed what I saw. And yeah, C9, I liked watching the whole tournament. I think they did solid. I think they played in a way where they had a chance to go deeper. Liquid just had a little bit more pep to their step in that matchup, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think you know, Leaf was outstanding the whole entire tournament. You know, he like really showed out the whole entire event. It's kind of like you said, like Scream, Navera, like all these guys. My low-key MVP in that whole entire matchup was Link. I think that the way that he was like doing the hookah control and everything like that with the judge, how he was anchoring, I think that
so
he
annoying.
Played, yeah, it's so frustrating to play against because you really do have to respect it almost as if it's like an op. And the reason why is because you have to dedicate utility to it. You have to talk to each other like micro comms, like I'm going to swing deeper so you can swing shorter. Like you have
and
to
not
like,
even to take a bomb site.
Exactly. Just to like overtake an area, just so you could jump out of hookah, for example. Like, so it's like there's so much disruption that can come. And what happens is that, you know, I've always kind of mentioned my thing is like you fight fire with fire, right? And Cloud9 has that same judge cheesy kind of mindset in some ways, way Vanity does it. So it's like this was Link playing fire with fire, you know, this is him like showing them what they can do. And sometimes you don't always know what counters your own game plan like that. So this is maybe one of those situations that they maybe not have encountered that too much, you know, and just that judge element, in my opinion, probably threw them off at an increasingly rate, you know.
And as the first map, that's probably just so annoying, right? In a series, right?
It's one thing.
Yeah, especially as Vanity. It's just like, I'm not saying Vanity got tilted or anything, but that as someone who's a fellow judge guy, like you said, is like looking in the mirror and feeling like, what do we do?
Yeah, you're like, damn it, man. Like, what counters would I do? And it's like, it's probably not that much. That's why you do it, you know? And then it's like, you really have to respect it. Like you said, just to get into a bomb site. This is not even to like do much more than just like actually get on and try and get some good fights. And it's like, and the thing too is it's very cheap gun. So there's so many rounds that you can have so much impact with a weapon that doesn't cost that much. And you can just like anchor a bomb site completely. And then you do have, like you said, like the Scream element, the Nevera element, like the Yampy element. Like there's so many things going on that I think that Liquid adding that, like I was actually impressed. And I think that Sliggy did a really good job there as far as making sure that they had a lot of different elements firing on all cylinders, not trying to just go for like one style necessarily, but like individual kind of plays or like tandem plays that didn't change the overall look of what they were doing as a team. Because sometimes it's like if you dive too much into like the cheesy strats and things too much, you like lose identity, I guess. In this case,
Yeah.
it's like they really didn't do
You
that. They
lose
kind of
confidence too. When those
exactly.
don't work, you don't have anything to fall back on. But yeah, they seem to have both gears for sure.
And both games were extremely close too, so I guess it could have gone either way. But the amount of composure was incredible, and it's like a judge diff, I think, the whole entire way.
Well, making it across the line there, Team Liquid went on to face Ascend. Before we get to that, jump down below where X10, the team that had knocked out Envy earlier on to book their spot in the playoffs, end up against Gambit. And they also take a map off Gambit. Now, that made Gambit look kind of like a wounded beast. You know, they were dropping maps the whole way through. It wasn't the same clean form that we saw. And at one point, it was looking like they were possibly about to be eliminated. I mean, X10 were certainly putting up a fight in that first half of the final map on Breeze. But then we saw the Gambit defensive side turn over to the attack and just look incredible. They were lights out for the entirety of the rest of it. But I was still surprised by what X10 put forward. Again, as a region that competes in some FPS titles at a reasonable level, but never really one that competes with the top level. And X10 very nearly knocked out the finalists. How did you feel about that one, fRoD?
Yeah, I mean, it feels really good in the sense of like seeing all these teams compete. But you know, I think at the end of the day, a team like Gambit, they're one of the best teams in the world for a reason. So even if they drop a map, it doesn't really mean too much to them. I think if anything, like their play style, since they kind of default heavy on T side and just kind of let the round develop a lot. I think teams are trying to catch up a little bit. Like their defense is dominant, so that's like a different beast that you have to deal with. But I think teams are trying to catch up to them a little bit on their T sides. So that's why you know you can see sometimes teams have a game here and there. But the thing is, like Gambit, they're one of the best teams in the world, if not the best. You know, and the way that they play, like they're never going to be out of it. So you really have to like just try and stomp on them to like take them out. And that's why like some of these teams, like even X10, like they won one of the games they won was like 13-7 against Gambit. But it's like if you don't put them out, like it's going to be really tough. And Gambit is always going to stay in the game. I think that like the coaching staff, management, all the players, they just have so much will to win that it doesn't even matter how close these games get. You know, props to X10 for doing a showing. Like they beat Envy and then they didn't just like fluke out immediately after. But at the same time, you have to be firing on a different level to beat Gambit if you're playing like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
definitely.
mean, we saw Ascent not only for them. I think I don't even know if they played it in the group stage. I was just trying to check, and that's the map they lost on. I don't know if it's just, I noticed like Nats seems to really thrive on like all the close like bind haven split, I think more like a sense more open map, and maybe I just noticed scoreboard he seems a little less on those maps sometimes. I don't know if that affects him, but then they lost I think 13-7 to Crew in the next matchup on Ascent as well, so it might also be a map related thing for them to figure out that strategy, because they have a certain flow on the other maps in the way that it's not cheesing, but like Nats is like this kind of hybrid controller sentinel guy that does a lot of work, and on Ascent and even a little bit on Breeze, I noticed Nats sometimes will drop off a little bit. I mean, his skill is still there. Just the way that he affects the round seems to be a little bit more passive on those maps than on the others.
Yeah, they got the triple threat of 13-7s at this event. In champs, they lost it every time they played Ascend. X10, Crew, and Ascend all smashed them 13-7 there. So it was
Oh, interesting.
and
Yeah.
even like they started attack versus X10, defense versus Crew and Ascend, like it didn't seem to matter. They just were not having a good time at this event. I think there's definitely something there, a code to be cracked. Maybe some of the other teams did manage to crack it, but speaking of other teams, Fnatic Crew, wow. Not the game that I was expecting. I'll say that. Crew had definitely inspired a lot of confidence in themselves on their run so far, but coming up against Fnatic, who looked scary in group stages, topping out, remember, they came into the group of death. We had Cloud9, Vision Strikers, and Fnatic. Unfortunately, full sense. God rest their soul. Poor guys. But the rest of the teams, they're all in there. They're looking fantastic. Fnatic topped the group, and then they lose to X10 off the or sorry, they lose to Crew off the bat. I mean, nothing. That's
Yeah.
definitely not a reality that I saw coming into that day.
Yeah, I don't know if they just got a little overconfident. They opened up on Haven and Dirk was popping off, and they just when I don't know what was it 9-3, 8-4. I only actually got to watch first map of this one, and I just remember them opening up and be like, oh, like Fnatic's gonna probably close this one like 13-7. And then I look back in
Yeah.
and it's tied. And yeah, I just think that could be a case where I don't know if that's what a Fnatic's weakness is. I don't know if they ease off the pedal a little bit, Um,
No, I think you're onto something there because, in my opinion, I think it's a weakness when. So Fnatic, in my opinion, likes to play a lot of retake on their defense. When you play a lot of retake on the defensive side and you're playing against a team that's pretty aggressive and takes space from you, you can never really feel comfortable executing your plan of retaking when they're taking away the space that's required of you to even initiate that retake, for example. So when Crew had that
they're
really
cutting out like a couple phases, not to cut you
exactly
off. They like remove a couple phases that normally play into the timing of the round for you.
Exactly. And for them, if you remove that, they may not have that element game planned in, or you might have like that one util that could disrupt that whole
Feels like you're
entire
getting
piece of
scrimmed,
util.
but it's happening to you at the land.
Exactly.
You're like,
And
okay,
so it's kind of like, the mindset of like, let's say you're playing against a Killjoy and the Killjoy has an ult. You kind of want to like play aggressive post plant because you want to take away the space from them. It's like Crew is
yeah.
playing as if the other team had a Killjoy ult the whole entire time, which meant that they never actually played like post plants from like far back or even necessarily on site. They were playing them like very on site and forward, maybe even like, taking a lot of space from Fnatic. So I think that was more of like a good game plan decision. So even though I would never have predicted Crew to beat this game, just kind of like observing it, it almost seems like a mismatch of style that Crew is the favorite when it comes to how they play, because that might be the weakness of Fnatic when it comes to that. Like if you're too passive in some moments and you're playing against a team that's sort of hyper aggressive, they don't have the space to execute the game plan that they're looking for.
That's actually been something that we talked a little bit about in EMEA. There are some teams, Fnatic and FPX, I think most notably FPX, um, kind of play too smart sometimes. Like they overthink it.
Yeah, yeah. It's too
When you
smart for their
come
own
in and
good,
you're the better team. Sometimes you got to just play like that. You got to just come in and say, hey, you know what? We're gonna put this guy on a Jet. We're gonna put this guy on a Phoenix. We're gonna just play aggressive and win the game. But they come in, they start trying to play very tactically against a team that's not going to give you the respect to have the kind of space that they want and that they're used to when they scrim with an EMEA or when they play officials against teams that are on their level. I think that's also another problem that you get by having a closed system. I remember for like the longest time there was no open qualifiers. There was no way in EMEA, especially there was no way to get good officials against just a bunch of teams. Like jumping in those open qualifiers, we saw a lot of top EMEA teams struggle against teams they are just absolutely better than because they didn't know what to do. It's like if you're not a good team playing respectfully, thinking a lot about and making adaptations, they were just like, wait, what? What do you mean they're just playing the same default every round? What is this?
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that was something that caught them off for sure. But either way, Crew were there to reap the rewards, right? They still managed to push all the way to the end and close out that series, which was incredible. And these guys, I really felt like there was nothing that they could do anymore that surprised us. Because even though the narrative would always be that they were the underdogs in any match that they had moving forward after beating Fnatic, because they were going to have Gambit and then either Liquid or Ascend in the finals, which would, no matter what, be better teams. It was like, I'm not counting them out at any point. No one could. These guys are scary. And I think, as the tournament builds up, Do you think from teams on the other side of the bracket or teams like Gambit who are seeing, oh, we might have to play Crew next, and then that Fnatic result comes through, there's almost like a mystical element to it as well then, you know? Like these guys aren't who you expected to, and I feel like playing against an underdog is a hard spot to be in for a lot of these players who are, for the most part, inexperienced at lands of this magnitude.
Yeah,
I
for
think,
sure. I mean,
yeah.
the thing, like, I think a lot of these guys, like, when you may not respect a team so much, you don't give them a style and you don't like respect their style of play. It's like this is one of these things. Like Crew has a style of play. They're very aggressive.
I would
They
hope so.
like, they yeah, but it's like they demand so much respect of it because, like I said, they're taking so much space and like they have their own style, and you pretty much have to um like the skill level is there, the strategic side is there. I mean, that makes a complete team in a way, because at the end of the day, your strategic side is always going to get you to the bomb site, and the firepower is what's going to save you at the end of the day if certain things are falling behind. And these guys, like, they not only were beating teams based on how they were playing the game, like strategically, but guys like Keznit, like, they were popping off. Like, they were like that 6K that he had on Icebox. Like, they lost that game, but I mean, it was disgusting. And it was one of these things that he just actually individually showed that he's one of the best duelists in the world. And maybe before going into a tournament, no one would have seen that from him. But people are going to have to start respecting that just based on the way that he played this whole entire event.
Let me ask you a question now, because we're gonna move on to the semifinals. What the hell happened to Liquid? They come into this game and they don't even get enough rounds across two maps to win one map. I mean, that was a surprise. This entire tournament delivered. Pretty much every single game was hyper competitive, regardless of what team it was. Crew's opening matchup, maybe one of the games from Full Sense. Other than that, in the group stages, every single game was a banger. And then we come into this and Liquid just get manhandled, dude. I mean, this was a series where it's not even like cNed just started dominating and killing everyone. cNed had one of the worst series he's ever had. It was 28-25, which just speaks to how good cNed is. But that was, almost an underperformance from him with starxo and Zeek leading the charge. I mean, my God, what happened to these guys? Where did Liquid go?
Yeah, this is not what you want to see here. So this was part of the weekend for various reasons I don't need to get into. It was hard for me to watch. I was traveling with my
Hmm.
family and we had a sick family. So I was kind of peeking it out. And the first thing that caught me off, I was like, look at the pick from Ascend on Bind right when I saw Brimstone, Sage. It looked like the
Yeah.
first meta round aside from Sky. And I
Mhm.
enjoyed the pick, but I was kind of watching spottily and I just okay, there's 13-6. All right. And so for me, that's really all I got. I was surprised by the pick. And on both maps, honestly, when we went to split, it was pretty like it seemed like a couple metas ago. They're like, okay, Cypher, Omen, Sage, Jet Rays. I felt like everyone else Breach and KO and all these things. So it seems like they just
Yeah.
went home. They're like, listen, we're gonna play with confidence, we're gonna do our thing, and we're gonna just show up and lay it on the table. And they laid it straight on
Yeah, and
No,
it's like
dude.
forehead.
we had mentioned like Zeke in the past, like how it was kind of like a big F that G2 had let him go. And I mean,
Yeah.
look at him go now. I mean, I bet they wish they could have him back. You know what I'm saying? Like he just popped off this whole entire tournament. Obviously cNed played well, but when your star player has like one of the worst games that he's played and they could put this result out there, that
Mhm.
kind of puts Ascend on the map because prior to that, like they obviously hadn't even lost anything, maybe outside of the keyed game originally or whatever. But um, they look good in the tournament, but nothing crazy. Once they won this game, it was like, holy shit! Like the grand finals is going to be ridiculous because if they're playing on this level against Liquid and they're going to face up against Gambit, they're probably going to beat Gambit if they could have like a fraction of that because Liquid is one of the best teams in EMEA. There's even like firepower, the way that they're playing and everything like that. And if they could do that to them, just like manhandle them in the semifinals against guys like Scream and Navera, guys that have like the ultimate kind of experience when it comes to the stage and the game like that. I mean, how many times? This is probably all the players in Ascend. This is like they're probably rookies on stage like this in some sort of way, especially in comparison to Liquid. And look what they did to them. I mean, this is one of these things that it's like, holy crap! Like Ascend is we've always kind of like mentioned how good of a team they are. It was kind of like finding their final form, like being able to put like a good week together of this kind of performance. And they've kind of had little tournaments here and there online. And this was like a beauty to see, you know, just being able to watch them like just dismantle one of the best teams in the world. That this could have been the grand finals. And you know, had they got in second, had Ascend got in second place or whatever, like you never know. This could be the grand finals, and this is what could have been. Oh my god, like Ascend is crazy right now, and a lot of it was based on the individual play. Because you know Liquid is known for having their little cheesy strats and little things and crazy setups, and Ascend just did not care. They were not bothered. They just like swiped them up and just moved
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I think overall it was a real surprise for us watching that from the sidelines, seeing Ascend dominate, and I guess going into the grand final, we were also expecting it to be a good match purely because of that, but we still had to decide who was going to play them there. And my God, I mean, we talk about Crew over delivering this series up against Gambit 2-1, but that doesn't even begin to describe how close of a game this was. The whole way through, they trade each other's map picks to start with. Gambit take theirs 13-8. Ascent is played out by Crew, and we already discussed Gambit on Ascent. Not too great. They lose that 13-7. Bind. Oh, man, my throat still hurts from this game. 18-16. One of the tightest OTs, the closest game by far we get at Champs. And you look at the way some of these rounds went down. I mean, the OTs were crazy, dude. Trading back and forth. The defensive side win for both teams, then to the attack. It was like there was no letting up. And one of the best things for me was looking at how well Crew did there on Bind, with again, Nags not quite delivering the same level, but he wasn't on his jet anymore. He was now pushed over to a Sage. He was providing much more depth to the team than what we see when he's on that jet and under delivering. But it's a real heartbreaker for Crew, because honestly, there was a point where, you know, we're coming into that map 3, we're about halfway through, and I'm thinking I genuinely could not care which one of these teams make it. It's a great narrative either way. It's been a great set of games, and you know that they'll either one would deliver well on the grand final versus Ascend. But in the end, it was Gambit, and so we wished, or we bade farewell to the Latin Americans and to anyone that wasn't EMEA. I mean, they put up one hell of a good run, though.
Yeah,
And this
America was finally eliminated from the tournament. It was, you know, sad to see us go out in the
America.
semis like that.
Us. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I see how it is.
and this was like this is the one I was kind of peeking it out. I happened to catch that Chronicle round.
Oh, dude.
And I was like, because that was almost like Crew got the entry, I remember, and then Chronicle just comes through backhaul and just
He like triple
just
flicked
blinked.
the ADS at the
Triple,
end.
yeah,
It has like 0.1 cents or something. It was like the
Yeah.
fastest triple swipe I've ever seen.
yeah, it was insane. And then it was still 12-10 though. Crew wins next round. This was pretty close to Gambit going home. So it was definitely a great effort, like you said, by Crew.
Yeah, I think the
No.
storyline was so strong as far as like how good Crew is that it took everything out of Gambit, like one of the best teams, if not the best team in the world, and they barely beat them. Like Crew's for real, that's for sure. But Gambit is probably one of the most resilient teams in the world, like by far. I think, you know, obviously that they may have their ups and downs, they may not win every single tournament, but you have to be playing on your A game in order to like to beat these guys.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure. And we talked a little bit about Nats, you know, having some struggles in some of the other games, and obviously when it comes through to this one, that certainly wasn't the case. Looking at Bind, he finished out 29-20.
He always
Only
seems to show up
bested by
on Bind,
Chronicle.
Mitch.
What?
I don't know. It seems like one of his comfort zones. He always seems with
Yeah.
Viper on Bind. It just seems
That
like one of his
short
comfort
lurk
zones.
is
yeah.
so disruptive.
Yeah, there's been like him and Mixwell in the EMEA that like are the two that really stood out from the games I've been covering, where they just feel at home. They are in their own skin when it comes to Bind, and it's impossible to put them on the back foot, really. Uh, Moving on though, that was Gambit through. They beat Crew. It was, I guess, the result that you would have expected coming into the event. I would have said that they would give 3 rounds maximum to Crew, and yet the story for LATAM has been something that no doubt they'll cling on to for a long time and hopefully build on moving forward into the next Masters events late into next year. looking at the final, Acend versus Gambit, I was so scared we were going to get another 3-0. Like after such a meaty tournament, the last thing we wanted was just a blowout grand final. And thankfully we did not get it. Sure, the last map might have been a little bit one-sided in Ascend's favor, but looking at the whole run through, I think it delivered decently well. There were ups and downs, but overall they put on a bit of a show. I guess it comes back to the point we made about BO5s though, and how it always just seems like there's the comfort zones are fun to watch, but once you get to those pocket picks, it's just a blowout. Move on to the next map.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things like BO5 can it's like a marathon. I mean, it's just way too many games sometimes. There's not even almost enough maps to really make that sort of happen. In some ways, it's kind of like you're almost playing every single map out there minus a couple. Um, and yeah, I mean, these teams are so evenly matched in some sort of way that you don't necessarily need 5 maps to determine like which is the best team from a week long tournament like this. Like it's been
Yeah,
such a grind that the BO3 should be able to, it should be okay. But at the end of the day, for someone like myself, I was very entertained of it because being able to see these teams and see the styles like kind of develop over time, seeing how Gambit plays to me is always extremely impressive because I think that whole entire style of play that they have is very unique. But then when you look at the side of Ascend, um, they hadn't really been like challenged that much throughout the whole entire tournament. You know, like their toughest game was going to be the Liquid game, and it was a
sure.
cakewalk for them. So it's like this was technically the first time they were their backs against the walls, minus the their opening keyed game. But man, like these guys are so resilient. I mean, even some play or games like kiles, he didn't have that many kills in some games. He kind of had like a statistically weaker performance in the grand finals,
Mhm.
and he was still having so much impact. And for me, a lot of these things like Ascend is such a better team when it comes to like statistically that day that it just you could just see it, just the way that they were playing and shooting. It almost felt like it was only a matter of time, and like they're resilient, and cNed just finally showing up and having like really really solid performances as well there.
Do you think, Danny, that it was good for Gambit to bind over Ascent?
I mean, the thing is, like with them, everybody knows what Nats is gonna do. It's how you can stop it. Some teams
Mm,
may not have the ability to have a proper game plan around it. Like some teams they give up his U-Haul lurk and they'll let him just take it. And some people they realize, okay, we need to play in front of the Viper Util, and they have like really good game plans to get in front of the Viper Util on
yeah,
short.
play
Um,
aggressive and push him off.
Exactly. So it's like if teams don't have a comfortable game plan, I mean, maybe they just felt like Ascend probably is the team that has the biggest read on them when it comes to it. Maybe they figure that it's
Yeah,
one of
from
these.
scrims or whatever
Yeah,
reason.
you never know,
Yeah.
and it's just one of these things. Like you said, like the game plan of Gambit in most maps is to let Nats do his little plays like that. And if you know that, I mean, in my opinion, the way you stop that is you try and just take him out, and then you deal with everybody else because the strats revolved around him. He's one of these, like it's one of these styles of play that's like very unique. Like think about a team that when they exec on bomb sites, they have 4 people execing on a bomb site, and there's one guy lurking all the time. It's like it's
Mhm.
very disruptive because what's more important, the 4 that's on the bomb site or the one that's gonna like try and
Yeah.
flank you from
And then
behind?
if he
You know,
chooses to go with the 4, he's
you
still a
never
thorn
know
in your side that you're
exactly.
just not sure of. And that's when people ask what a good lurk is, that's a good lurk, right? Someone who you have to think of him even if he's not doing anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, maybe this case, like cNed and the guys, they have like a really good answer for what he does. But at the end of the day, it's like very hard to stop. You just have to be decisive of your game plan around that type of style.
I think one of the things that they'll definitely read into as well. They had played on Bind at Rebel Homeground. Now I want to be very careful about drawing any conclusions from Rebel Homeground. A lot of teams were playing off comms. They were fucking around. Like it was not a serious tournament where you look at results and go, well, they beat them here. However, it was 13-0. I mean, you look at the comp that typically you see a Sand run, they've got their rays, they've got their sky to really clear you out. That orbital strikes for Viper pit counters. Like they have a lot to really push Nats out of his comfort zone and to seize map control. Like the way Ascend play the early bathroom control on attack, they will just constantly be challenging you for that map, building up their ult orbs on super valuable ultimates. Like their whole comp is full of round changing ultis. There's nothing
Yeah.
that you're like, oh, it's a neural theft,
Well,
No,
so
every single orb matters to them.
and those are great points. And so I guess maybe that like kind of wraps it up then. They maybe played more into trying to avoid their weaknesses rather than playing to their
Sure.
strengths, because they did just lose 13-7 twice in a row on
Yeah,
Ascent.
or maybe they just went in like a time back machine, and they just played like the beta comp with like Sage and Brimstone, and they had no idea what to do, because
Yeah.
what they were putting a
Yeah,
lot of those like
for
straight
sure.
walls on showers, and you have to destroy all the blocks and stuff like that, and it's like pretty annoying to get through sometimes. I mean, it's not that
It
it's very
messes up your
difficult; it's
flow
just
when it's
annoying
not there.
because not every
Mhm.
team puts up those kinds of walls on you in your strats in your practices. So, if it delays your exec by 10, 15 seconds and the other half of the team doesn't necessarily know how to adapt or slow things down, yeah, I mean, it will throw
Your
you
comms
off.
need to be on point then, and yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they're
and
also
you
on a
do have
10
to.
win streak on Bind. Ascend were, including that 13-0 to Gambit. So I get that you'd be like a little bit hesitant going into it. And I think for Ascend, that's a team that, from talking to their players, they very much like to focus on themselves before games. Obviously, they'll do like the bare minimum of counterplay of looking at what their opponents like to do, but for the most part, they look at their own
You
tendencies
said
as opposed
Ascend
to
is like
others.
this?
Ascend, yeah, yeah. When I
Yeah.
interviewed them, I was like, talking about prep because obviously we had the whole Vivo Keed situation. I was like, how did that affect you moving into the game that they played? And they were just like, yeah, Stars was like, we don't prep, we prep ourselves.
Yeah.
So whether we know the opponent or not, it doesn't change that much for us. And that was post match interview, so it was interesting to hear that from them that they like to be more introspective than looking at the outside. Whereas for Gambit, these guys will get to know you. They'll get to know you very well and start to really mess with you. So I understand the bind not being played there necessarily, but yeah, it went it went exactly the same way as it had on Ascent every other time. 13-7. I lose that one out. Fracture. Don't think Ascent were quite ready for what was going down there. That was a absolute landslide for Gambit, kind of what we talked about, some of these maps, because there's just 5 maps to play with, constantly evolving meta. It's kind of hard for teams at the moment to keep pace, and that also raises an interesting conversation moving forward. And the next year we'll have 9 maps, and to that after 11, and so on. Eventually, we're going to need to start capping that out a little bit.
Yeah, and it is, isn't it just crazy too, especially if you're watching the show and you don't watch a ton of FPS or haven't played at a high level, to just see what Danny and I were talking about earlier with like the mechanics and the ceiling for that of like kind of what's the threshold of what you need
Mhm.
versus the prep. And like that's like a very polarizing example on playing Fracture there of like when it's not really about skill at that point, it's just about prep and map knowledge
Sure.
and the things you do. And obviously the more everyone becomes familiar with the map, that kind of gets diluted and everyone's a little bit closer in terms of like map knowledge. But there
Mhm.
is a big difference of just the way things play out. And that's why as the map pool gets refined and teams watch each other and we go to the conversations like the KRU type teams, and you have to start to be ready for the each map for the team that plays super defaulty and slow and breaks down the map into quadrants versus the team who's just like, we're gonna bullheaded take map control in a certain area, and
Mhm.
um, how to have multiple setups to set up stuff for early aggression, and then if you're not going to do that, how do you mitigate risk and save a bunch of your util in a way that you don't just lose the round if they play aggressive. But and so it's like these are conversations at a high level that aren't, it sounds sometimes really romantic talking about it, but they're hard to solve. They're hard to solve
Yeah.
problems sometimes, especially when you want to have solutions that aren't just fit for one team.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
I think that that's why it brings like the really interesting conversation, and even like I'll tie this because like me and Jordan, we were teammates for a long time, but also like we had a specific style when we played together, and then on your different teams, like maybe they had a different style. Like the difference of like when we were playing together, for example, like we really believed so much in like creating our own meta and our own style. Like we didn't care about watching VODs of other teams or anti-stratting or anything like that. And I think that that's what I think brings a lot of strength to Ascend, because you create your own identity and you create your own metas in some sort of way. You're not worried about the other
Yeah, the
opponents.
other
And
top teams specifically get thrown off a lot.
yeah, because if you don't necessarily like have a style that people like you're like copying or like is what's considered meta, there's really not a box to put you in, and that's what makes it tough. And so what happens is when you go to the other side of it, like that whole like if IGLs are like heavy anti-strat side, you don't necessarily create your own identity. And that creates problems in tournaments because you may struggle against specific styles of teams. And you also have to factor in the fact that when you're watching a team and you're studying for a team, that's another professional team across the table from you. Like they're going to go into the game against you with a different game plan, not the one that you just watched potentially. You know what I mean? So you have to give them the sort of credit that they're going to adapt their game plan as well. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm not a fan of anti-stratting at all in a way, because you might be getting yourself, you get in your head too much, you know, and I'd rather just like focus on my own style like that. And then food for thought, you know, but not implementing.
So, did Gambit read too much in to Ascend, or was that not the difference maker regardless?
It could also be that Ascend the style of um not necessarily falling into the trap of looking too much into the other team might
Mhm.
be the superior style in that way, because you don't fall into the trap, especially in these like long tournaments and grinds, these BO5s. Like, what are you gonna do? Spend 30 minutes to like watch a VOD and read go over the game plan per map every single time? Like, it does get a little
Yeah.
bit flustering sometimes, and the team that's like more like free flowing, like just has like the better time in the highest pressure
Yeah,
situations.
maybe. Yeah, when it comes down to it.
I think one of the big things about Gambit, for me, we used to back when I was working with Alliance, we'd scrim them a lot, and this was before this is before M2 would have happened. And back then, there was a lot of conversation about Gambit. Like everyone was talking well, within EMEA, within CIS, being like, "Dude, these guys in scrims, they are unbelievable." It was like Boaster on record saying that, "Yo, your scrims are going well if you're beating Gambit. If you like, that is the benchmark of like, damn, what we're doing is actually working because we can beat these guys." Because no one was. Teams are getting like 13 forward by them, and I mean like top level teams are what would actually matter. They're getting 20 forward by them because you play all the rounds. Obviously, once we finally got that added into the game. Um, for me, the biggest thing about Gambit was always Defo, and it was really weird to see Masters 2 moving forward into any of the European tournaments. We never really saw Defo step up. Nats was always the conversation. You'd have a lot about Redgar and stuff, but Shados actually, especially when he's playing the Reyna. But Defo never got the spotlight that much because he didn't deliver, right? Statistically, looking at his early EMEA days, it wasn't there. But in the scrims, man, this guy was unbelievable. And now I think he's reached that comfort level. And the thing that sold me on it was his bind play. He is like obviously not in the finals, but in the semis, I think it was. They will constantly have themselves set up like Defo being on top of a short with an operator, another player ready to trade down below. Often that's going to be Nats. You go forward, you're going to get opt. He's going to dash out. Your only choice to trade that is to rush him down. And when teams try that, second guy swings, takes you down. Guy who's playing bathroom probably has some utility. He's falling back. Now they've got a triple crossfire on you. You're dead. You're running into a trap to try and get that trade. When you play instinctively against Gambit, you get messed up, man. Like it is so difficult because they just bring you into these little traps and then
Yeah.
beat the shit out of you. When it comes to Ascend, though, I think because they've played so much against Gambit over the year, I was gonna say the years, I haven't gotten that far yet, but over the year they've played so much against Gambit, they will have scrimmed constantly against this team to the point that now I think they're kind of like familiar with a lot of those traps, a
So they
lot of those
could play
pitfalls to
almost
catch other teams off.
instinctively. They could almost
Mhm.
go back to instinctively at that point because they've established a rapport with each other.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
it
now
just
they're not
becomes
being
like
put on
more
the
food
back
for
foot right
thought.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, for them, like they just have it all natural, and like any like micro adaptations, they could just be like, taking a little break and just be like, hey, we should do
This is
this
hard
now,
stuff
and
to
like it
keep up
works.
with,
it
right?
is.
When you're
Without VODs,
without
especially.
VODs, looking at the
No.
scene, you scrim each other. What do we do? Like, what's actually real from the scrims? What's not? So, yeah.
No, and
Overall, though, 5 maps.
I think too is like the storylines of like even like the way that these guys practice against each other and how it transitions into these matches. Like it's actually incredible how they you could tell that these guys were like changing it up, because you normally would see like cNed playing different agents. In the grand final, he played Jet the whole way through.
Mhm.
So that was also really cool to see as well. Just letting him just like do his thing and maybe seeing if that like kind of game plan would work best. Just like that what, let's not let him touch Sage this grand final. Let's just let him go all
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I think aspects of that certainly come into play. And as we close things out, Ascend end up on top for one of the many reasons we said, maybe multiple, maybe reasons we haven't. Who knows? It's gonna take a long time to certainly get to that level. I think replays, once we can watch matches back in the game. God, I can't wait for the future of Valorant. But for now, the only thing that is certain is that EMEA is number one. And I know that upsets you, fRoD, and that makes me damn happy. So
Hey, I'm cool with it, man. Y'all are pretty cool.
hey,